So let us start. So welcome everybody. Just to introduce myself, this is Süha Çubukçuoğlu. I'll be the moderator of this panel session on financial and technological capabilities regarding energy and climate change. We have distinguished guests on our panel today, and I'd like to introduce them to you. And in the interest of time, after a quick introduction, we will move straight into presentations by our presenters, and we'll leave question and answers and discussions to the end. We have Dr. Ahmet Yozgatlıgil, Vice President, TÜBİTAK Vice President, joining us. Welcome, Professor Yozgatlıgil.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have another distinguished guest, Dr. Kubilay Kavak, CEO of Eskarus. Welcome, Dr. Kavak.
Thank you very much.
We were planning to have a third distinguished guest with us, but due to an unforeseen circumstance, he could not join. So we will proceed with two panelists. And in this regard, I'd like to start with Professor Yozgatlıgil, if I may. Mm-hmm. Each of our presenters have prepared their slide decks so they can share through the screen and accompany their speech with the presentation slides. And starting with, if I may call Ahmet Bey with you, let me start by asking you about climate mitigation strategies and what you do in TÜBİTAK Marmara Research Center about climate strategies. Would you like to launch your presentation, or if you deem appropriate, start with your talk, please? The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. It's a very important subject. I would like to share my presentation. And today I will talk about, in terms of, technology perspective, what we are doing in TÜBİTAK Marmara Research Center in Gebze about, the climate change and the sustainability perspective. So I'm sharing my screen. Okay.
And just before you proceed, Ahmet Bey, in the interest of our time, let us limit our speech to about 10 minutes, 15 minutes max, so that we can have time for question and answers as well.
Sure. So can you see my full screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, okay. So as I said, in Marmara Research Center, actually we have 4 main sectors. In the past, the Marmara Research Center consists of 8 institutes, but now with, the world is now facing very, grand challenges, and it requires interdisciplinary actions and studies for coping with these grand challenges, which is like the climate change is one of the most grand challenges, the water resources, the energy. Therefore, in TÜBİTAK MAM, we have reorganized our structure in 4 main sectors. One is the life sciences, the energy technologies, material technologies, and which is the most related one, climate change and sustainability, where our polar research activities, water management, marine research, the circular economy and resource efficiency, these topics, which is related to today's meeting, are carried under this Vice Presidency, the Technology Center. So I'd like to start with very briefly. I will keep my time in 10 to 15 minutes at most. So the technology mechanism and the Paris Agreement, you all, we all know, the parties in the Article 10, long-term vision on the importance of fully realizing technology development and transfer in order to improve resilience to climate change and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So this technology, the technology strike and the technology implementation regarding these main topics like the energy, agriculture, water and waste, transport, climate observations and early warning, and the energy efficient appliances, renewable energy technologies, low zero emission vehicles, blended fuels, and such technologies requires 40-year, 50-year vision and planning in order to establish the zero emission goal. So when we talk about actually our science and technology strategies, as you all know, we have recently, our environment ministry organized the National Climate Summit of 2022 in Konya, and TÜBİTAK was, with our president, Professor Dr. Hasan Mandal, TÜBİTAK is very active in the science and technology strategy of the climate change efforts and planning. So I here put out several technologies which is related with these 5 main topics. And I will go over them very briefly, and I will talk about what we are doing. Actually, as you all know, TÜBİTAK is a funding agency which funds many different research among industry and university. Also, we are carrying out research with our institutes, and Marmara Research Center is one of them. So mainly the climate change, the clean and circular economy, clean and secure and affordable energy supply, sustainable agriculture and sustainable smart transport, and all these items related with these major 5 topics. And when we talk about climate change, environment and biodiversity, we are talking about these technologies and platform that you can see, and it is from different sectors, and as you see here, you can smart integrated ecosystem and biodiversity observations networks at high resolution. So it's about observing the GIS and remote sensing supported optimizing technologies and platforms and such technologies. When we talk about clean and circular economy, these are the major topics, as you can see here, and industrial carbon capture and storage, CO2 capturing using different innovative methods, which includes chemical, electrochemical, and biochemical processes, and also energy efficient building, etc. So also when we talk about clean, secure, and affordable energy supply, these are the items of the technologies that I have shown in the first slide. You see the related technologies which we need to acquire in the very near future, about especially renewable energy and different and hydrogen-based, solar-based, as you see here, different technologies. And when we talk about green and sustainable agriculture, these are the items. For example, here the water resources are very critical, and the unmanned autonomous agriculture vehicles for smart farming, and different information systems to enable the precision agriculture, and also controlling efficient use of resources like the fertilization, etc. So the sustainable smart transport requires acquiring these technologies, including fuel cell propulsion vehicles, hyperloop, and next generation high-speed charging technologies for electric vehicles, and also smart transportation systems. So these are the summary of the technologies, and the TÜBİTAK Marmara Research Center, the technology, the climate change and sustainable, as I said, we are organized in 4 different sectors, and related research is done under various sectors. So in TÜBİTAK, Marmara Research Center, we are actively working in these areas: the water management and treatment technologies, the biogas production technologies, energy efficient wastewater treatment technologies, and recovery technologies. So I would like to go over these very briefly. And also air quality and noise control and marine research technologies, especially deep sea discharge pipelines monitoring technologies are our activity areas. And in terms of energy conversion technologies, we are working on green and blue hydrogen production technologies, CO2 capture and utilization technologies, fuel cell technologies. So especially hydrogen and hydrogen economy related studies are under our radar, and we are very actively participating in various consortiums in Turkey related with especially green hydrogen, which is related with renewable energy, and also different power plant control technologies, especially for the hydroelectric production, and better control and monitoring and planning is under our focus. Also, as you all know, Turkey has important reserves of coal and lignite. And this lignite, of course, is in Turkey especially is we can say that this is low quality in terms of calorific value and in terms of its content. Therefore, the use of biomass with this low quality lignite and conversion of this by gasification to syngas, and from the syngas the production of different chemicals is possible, and it must be in our focus, especially with the oil prices soaring in these days. Therefore, conversion of lignite or coal all the way to different chemicals, liquid fuel, and other important chemicals is our focus, and we have some pilot plant in our research center. Of course, fuel cell systems and fuel cell powered electrical cars are, in the first slide, the important technology areas regarding with the sustainability. And of course, the carbon capture and carbon economy is in the focus. Therefore, we are talking about both the capture of carbon and also utilization of carbon dioxide. Capture of carbon dioxide and its utilization is very critical. Therefore, we are integrating different technologies for this purpose. And the production, the TÜBİTAK MAM has been authorized within the scope of the Waste Oil Management Resolution, environmental license to waste mineral oil refining facilities, and we are investigating, analyzing different production facilities for regarding with the oil management, and it is a very important actually activity that we are carrying on. And also, of course, when we talk about different technologies, especially the recovery of dischargeable water from different type of plants, and especially in different sectors, not only related with the bore, but also different factories, and recycling the water used, and eliminating the hazardous material is also one of our important activities. And we are very much focused on the development of the integrated photovoltaic modules and these applications. So these applications, actually recently we are working on the space applications, also the use of solar panel in space, actually the satellites, and also the different type of applications. And it is very critical, of course, the solar energy is very critical for this. So positive energy neighbors is also another main activity, and a lot of studies and research is focused on this area. So this is actually one of the important feature for civil engineering integrated with the different energy and environmental integration of the solutions. And of course, as I mentioned, the optimization of solar and hybrid solar power plants, their design and optimization is also very critical, and also it's very important for different hydrogen production techniques. So as I mentioned, so I would like to stop here. I would like to, as I said, give a brief perspective on what is the related technologies. And of course, these technologies requires a research and development phase, and it requires significant funding to support this frontier research. As I mentioned, as I listed, many different areas of research in many different fields. Plus, of course, after R&D, in order to utilize these solutions, like regarding with the building technology, the solar energy, wind energy, carbon dioxide capture and carbon dioxide related economy, carbon dioxide utilization requires significant investment if the technology is available. Of course, in order to utilize that, we require significant investment in order to actually utilize these technologies and reduce the carbon dioxide emissions, and also to carry out, let's say, zero carbon activities. Therefore, I mean, I talked about the technology perspective, but I'm sure we need to also focus on how can we carry out these activities, or what is the feasibility of these technologies. If the technology is available, how can we utilize those? And important perspective or point. Therefore, this requires the discussion. So I would like to start with this, maybe from the technology perspective, and I will be glad if if there's any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ahmet Bey, for this great overview. Very informative, beneficial for our listeners. And we'll save questions till the end. And in the interest of our time, I'd like to quickly move over to Dr. Kavak, CEO of Eskarus. And he will talk to us today about green finance opportunities for energy sector transition. Dr. Kavak, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I suppose that I'm going to present my presentation myself, right? By using the share screen.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Very nice. Okay. Today, I'm going to talk about green finance opportunities by taking the limited time into consideration. But before doing that, I would like to say a few words. Everybody knows that energy is indispensable to life in the modern life. And while I was listening to the previous presentation, Dr. Yozgatlıgil referred to the National Climate Summit, which was conducted a few weeks before, and he enlisted some of the new and innovative technologies. While I was hearing the enlisted technologies he mentioned, I noticed once again that all of those technologies are directly related or correlated with energy and energy use. Energy is so indispensable to life that in every sector, in every sub-industry, we need energy. When it comes to industry or the manufacturing production, it is indispensable. It is inevitable. You can't produce anything without using energy. When it comes to transportation, it's full of energy. It does not matter whether you are using electricity, electric cars, or hydrogen, or the conventional fuels, fossil fuels. And even in the agricultural sector, in order to harvest, you need fuel, you need tractors, you need some agricultural mechanization. And before doing that, you need irrigation and electricity for conducting irrigation activities. And in the post site, in order to transport all the harvested crops and vegetables and fruits and so on, you need, again, energy. So energy, it is very appear that will be a part of our life as today is happening, which means that after 30 years, we will be, if we live, of course, or our sons and daughters, will be continuing to discuss the energy matters. Because when you draw the energy back from our life, the remaining part will be very disappointing, actually. Why I'm telling all this? Because in the past a few years, the humanity has been discussing a transition in energy systems. In fact, we have been discussing less than in the last, let's say, in the last 2 decades. But in the last couple of years, these discussions have been intensified. And everyone understands different things from transition. Transition to what? There are...
Dr. Kavak, apologies for interrupting you, but I think your presentation slides don't move. Is that so? We can't see them moving. Are
okay. Normally, I can see the slides moving, but if there is a problem, one of colleagues may take the control and can help me.
Okay. If you can quit screen sharing, then I can immediately share on your behalf.
Sure.
Okay, let me share on your behalf.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay.
I'm in the first, second page.
Okay.
One more. Thank you. From there. Okay. As you can see on the left side, we are talking about a cleaner world by using cleaner energy systems and technologies and the opportunities. What it does consist, less polluting industries, exit from coal if possible, electric vehicles using the electricity instead of conventional fossil fuels, and more electrifying in industries such as the ovens and the boilers or the other things using much more electricity, especially the iron, steel, glass, and such heavy industries. Strengthening energy efficiency in buildings more and more. And all of these things are directly associated with the technologies and products such as DRI in iron steel industry, hydrogen, green chemicals, circular economy solutions, so on and so forth. And the question is, we are talking about a great, huge transition and transformation. What are the underpinning factors behind this? As you know that a latest IPCC report, sorry, I wrote wrong here, IPCC, it had to be, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, highlights that we are on the verge of some climate catastrophes. Years ago, we were thinking that this kind of catastrophic events are happening in 4 geographies of the world, let's say in Eastern Asia or in the Arctic places and so on. But last year in Turkey, we have seen all these precursor signs of such kind of catastrophe in Turkey. First of all, we experienced a very severe drought. Then it was followed by very severe rains in especially the Black Sea region of Turkey. And we also at the same time experienced the forest fires. So we are now experiencing the effects of climate change. And the world is asking that question. Okay, we can see the temperature rise of the world, and IPCC report says that the temperature rise is caused by the anthropogenic reasons, which means that because of human activities, and we should do something. Paris Agreement and towards creating greener options are the answers of the world to this threat or the climate change problem. And the second issue is that we are seeing a war, or at the beginning it was a clash. Now it might be called as a war, Russia-Ukraine war. And we see that such kinds of events or incidents accelerate the countries and the unions and the developed world to take more robust steps. 2 days ago, the European Commission has proposed an outline. Probably you have already read from the newspapers, and they are saying that we are going to reduce the fossil fuels use in the continent, and we will decrease the share of Russia in our energy import. And 2 days before that, International Energy Agency put a roadmap to transit or to transform into less fuel-dependent energy structure in the world. Could you please, one more, pass on? Thank you. But we are talking about a lot of things in energy sector to change, to have some concrete steps and so on. But again, there is another question. What is the question? How are we going to do that? Because it will necessitate a lot of billions of dollars money. This is a very recent forecast from McKinsey. There are a lot of forecasts prepared by international organizations, International Energy Agency, OECD, IMF. All these agencies, you may know, are estimating the possible funding needs. And this is the latest one. And it says that for each year, we will need a total of $275 trillion for changing the world, not only in energy sector, but also in the other high emission sectors like agriculture and so on. And what we see that you can see the graph on the bottom, the green color represents the net zero scenario, whereas the black one is the as-is scenario, I mean the baseline scenario, which means that we are going to make investments as we have been doing on the last decade. And you can see that every year, even in 2020, we need more than $5 trillion investment in both energy and other high carbon footprint sectors. Could you please press the button?
Yes, Dr. Kavak, just as a kind reminder, we'll have about another 10 minutes for the rest of your slide deck.
I'm going to move forward. And in order to answer all these things, one of the options we have been discussing is sustainable finance. Why it is investors? There are three main reasons, three main drivers we need to underline. The first one is the investors' expectations. Investors means that either the big banks or the funds operating all over the world, or the small investors putting their money into the banks or to the exchange. The second driver is that now the financial institutions put much more importance on the ESG, which means environmental, social, and governance, which means that greener operating business. And there are some ratings. Even in Turkey, in Borsa Istanbul, there is a separate index rating the companies from the perspective of sustainability and greening. And the third driver is the regulations. What we have been seeing for the last 5 years in financial industries, as well as the real sector, I mean the manufacturing sector, they are being exposed and probably will be exposed as well to tougher standards. You can see the taxonomy of European Commission, which requires a lot of tough actions for the companies operating in the manufacturing, as well as for the banks who are providing money to realize all these investments. We come forward. What is sustainable finance then? First of all, what it is. If you would like to invest your money to the projects having environmental concerns, it does not necessarily mean that it should be in the green building investment or, let's say, renewable energy. It might be any investment taking the environment into consideration in a very sensitive way can be grouped as a sustainable operation. And then if you give money, if you provide funds to such kind of a project, it can be identified as sustainable finance. This is the first condition. The second one is that we need to identify and monitor what is happening during the project, before the project, during the project, and after the project in the operation side. And the third thing is that it should be linked to, if possible, to sustainable development goals. But what is it? What it isn't? It is also important. We can see that there are some PR activities who are doing very dirty, let's say, mining operations or production operations and degrading the environment, and they are still saying that we are doing very sustainable business and we need sustainable finance. From now on, it is so evident that that would not be possible. This is also valid for the energy sector. We can go forward, Mr. President. Thank you. What are novel finance instruments? First of all, in any case, in energy sector, any kind of investment may be funded by classical approach or classical context. I would like to give some information about new novel finance instruments in sustainable business. There are two types of sustainable finance instruments. The first one is use of proceed areas: green bond, social bond, sustainable bond, transition bond, green loan, green leasing. And in the second part, sustainability linked bonds and loans. How it does work? A company would like to make an investment, comes to the funds or the banks or the other financial institutions and commit that, okay, I am going to use that money for producing these green solutions. Then put some indicators, KPIs, and if during the project implementation and after the project implementation, if the KPIs are met, then there will be no problem in the cash flow. And similarly, mostly the sovereign bonds are familiar with the audience, but the companies private companies can also issue bonds to get some money from the market. And what we have been seeing in the last couple of years is the fact that if a company issues a bond in such themes such as green bonds, social bonds, so on, they are getting more response from the investors, and it decreases their debt cost. So it is very important. We may pass on. According to the OECD estimations, last year, $6.3 trillion will be needed for energy, transport, water, and telecommunication infrastructure until 2030. A very rough estimate is that $2 trillion will be dedicated to the energy infrastructure investments, including the renewable ones. And as you can see from the left side graph, the green options given to the market is more than $1.5 trillion in the world. And just the sustainability themed debt market, not the bonds, but the debt market, reached almost $3 trillion last year. These are huge amounts, and it also gives us a very clear sign how the finance world is transforming itself to fund greener options in the world. We may pass on. And the relation between green bond and energy, when we talk about green bond, green options, green funding, or finance instruments, everyone first understands the renewable energy. There is no doubt it is one of the most important pillars of green options, but it is not the only one. Up to now, renewable energy derived the largest share in green investment. And in Turkey, this is a very latest figure, approximately 22.6 billion USD has been provided by the Turkish banking sector for renewable energy. And when we look at the whole credit operations of the banking sector, it represents approximately 5% of the total financing. 5% may seem a little lower than expected, but once you thought that the renewable energy installed capacity is more than 50% in Turkish electricity mix, then it's understood that it is not so lower. And one more slide I have, Mr. Chairman. There are other topics we need to talk about, we need to touch upon. The first one is the financing energy efficiency investments. We energy experts always say that two important things. The first one is the energy security. In every aspect of energy security is crucial. Once you don't deliver the energy when it is needed, this is the most expensive energy. The second one is the cheapest, the greener, the cleanest energy is the unproduced, ungenerated energy, which means energy efficiency. If we do energy efficiency, if we save the energy, then we don't need to produce or generate so much energy. So we need to increase and enhance energy efficiency. How we are going to do that? There are several financial options for widening and disseminating energy efficiency all over the country. The first one is ESCOs, harnessing energy service companies and the energy performance contracting into the model. The second one is the energy efficiency auctions. What I suppose that we are going to discuss these two topics on the coming years too much. The other option is green sukuk. There are some investors in Turkey and in the world who don't want to get some interest because of their religious religious positions, and they also would like to utilize their money. And sukuk is an Islamic option, which might be used in greener and social bonds as well. Green leasing and green mortgage are also options, especially for funding renewable energy operations. Yesterday, I suppose, one of the leasing companies of Turkey funded a huge roof solar plant in Trakya region. That is a very good improvement in Turkey. We see that not only the banks, but also the leasing companies are putting their hands under the stone. So that's very good improvement. And we also foresee that it will be disseminated and widened on the coming days. These are the things I would like to highlight. Thank you very much for your interest and patience, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dr. Kavak, for using the time efficiently and for this clear and concise presentation. Much appreciated. Since we have only about 2 minutes, maybe just enough time for one question, I'd like to ask the organizers for maybe an additional 5 minutes, if we may, to ask another question for our panelists. Let me stop share. Yeah. Let me check if there are any questions in the chat box. No. So I'll take the floor and start with a question to Ahmet Bey. Let me start by asking you about climate mitigation strategies. You mentioned carbon capture and storage, and this is usually a costly measure, or it's known as such. How do you see the future of carbon capture and storage in Turkey? Mm-hmm. Where are we at right now? Where do you see us in, let's say, 10 years from now?
Yes, I mean, it's still a debate. As you know, carbon dioxide capture, I mean, is not only the capture and storage, but we are talking about utilization. Utilization meaning that there's carbon in carbon dioxide, and carbon, you know, is and carbon related. You can, I mean, make or convert carbon dioxide to, let's say, different carbon containing energy resources. But of course, it requires some technology and cost. Storage is another issue. Okay, you need to store, but how do you utilize? Maybe utilization is use this carbon dioxide, for example, to produce organisms, algae, microorganisms, which can be converted to food and you know, protein, and also different kind of chemicals, which is possible. Or you know, you can use that carbon dioxide, captured carbon dioxide, in order to enhance recovery of oil from different wells. So I mean, in 10 years, I mean, of course, right now it's not feasible because there are different technologies, for example, in power plants, in order to enable carbon dioxide capture, which is, for example, one of the technologies, oxy-fuel combustion, which is burning with oxygen instead of air, which makes carbon dioxide capture easier. But of course, when is this going to be feasible? When you apply tax. Okay, like if you pay for carbon dioxide that you are emitting to the atmosphere, then these technologies will be feasible. Not only, of course, there are indirect taxing also. I mean, we talk about, for example, when you produce something, let's say any goods, how much, for example, carbon dioxide you emitted during the manufacture and the life cycle. We call this as a life cycle analysis. So if the produced goods is taxed according to the carbon dioxide production related with the production, then of course, I mean, the technologies will be, of course, will start to become feasible. In 10 years, to answer your question, I mean, there will be, you know, of course, this will be a must. I mean, we have fuel. I mean, we have coal, for example, and we would like to use hydrogen. We want to produce hydrogen, green or blue, depending on the resources that's available. But there will be time where this will be feasible, and you have to think about very seriously about, you know, carbon dioxide capturing, utilization, storage, etc.
Thank you, Ahmet Bey. Dr. Kavak, I'd like to ask you a question. I read in media this week that Saudi Arabia is leading some efforts in, you know, green transformation, especially their public investment fund published its green finance framework, paving the way for like raising green debt, where the proceeds of such sales will go towards projects in renewable energy, energy efficiency, sustainable water management, clean transport, and green buildings, etc. And they also plan to publish allocation and impact reports at the end of where, you know, when such debt is outstanding. Now, bringing it in the context of the current turmoil around Russia and Ukraine, we see that, you know, traditional oil and gas production in the US and Middle East is increasing, and some European nations are being advised to burn coal to counteract their dependence on gas from Russia. Is this a setback for transition to clean energy in countries like Turkey, like Saudi Arabia, the UAE? Or do you think traditional oil producers will continue their plans with like hydrogen plants and issuing financial instruments like green bonds?
That's a great question, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. This is my personal perspective. I believe that the transition from one type of fuel or the energy resource to another one would take years and years. It does not never happen overnight. When we look at the history of energy, we can see that from coal to oil took more than 150 years. Mm-hmm. And when we return back to oil to natural gas, mm-hmm. Two oil crises happened in the 1970s. And please notice that in the second oil crisis in 1977, the transition to the natural gas was rooted. When the oil importing countries used to same tool as a gun in 1977, Western mm-hmm. countries made a decision to create new alternatives, whatever the cost. This is mm-hmm. the reason of the emergence of natural gas. What we are observing in Europe right now is that not changing the predominant trend, rather it's a kind of measures to deal with the Russian attacks to Ukraine. Mm-hmm. So my understanding is that these are just tactical steps. Mm-hmm. Because 2 months ago, you know, the EU taxonomy was discussed a lot. We also discussed in the Turkish National Climate Summit. We were not expecting the natural gas and the nuclear would be in the EU taxonomy and would be identified as the, you know, green or near mm-hmm. to green. But EU Commission made a surprise because of the Germany's and France's, changing positions. However, we also need to look at what the finance industry is saying. Mm-hmm. The finance industry is not same with the one 20 years ago. The finance industry, even the European Investment Bank, this is, you know, an institution of European Union. It is mm-hmm. saying that, okay, this is the taxonomy to define what is green and what is not. But while funding the projects, we will use them, but we will use the compressed version of that one, which means that we are not going to conventional gas infrastructure projects or let alone the coal power plants.
Okay.
My position is that for Turkey, we need to think about the phase out of the coal power plants, but it will not happen from today to tomorrow. It will take, let's say, 20 years, because there are some coal power plants which was established last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. Their economical life cycle just began. So we understand the current dynamics of Turkey. However, the trend is going towards green, and we need to take some steps to align with this trend. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gavak, for your comprehensive answer. And with this, I'd like to conclude our panel discussion, and checking there are no more questions in the chat box. And thank you for our attendees, for speakers, for our distinguished guests, for sharing their views and knowledge with us.
Thank you.
And
thank you.
Have a great rest of the day.
Bye-bye.
I thank you as well.
Thank you.